If you've ever done any sort of investing in your life, you know that putting in a little bit of time or money at the beginning of an endeavor can pay dividends in the long run. So today, I'm going to show you how investing just 2 weeks at the beginning of your school year can make the entire rest of the year fun, enjoyable, and dare I say, stress-free. Hello, my time crunch teachers. Today, I'll be showing you how I teach my routines and procedures and how I build community in my 5th grade classroom. Now, I already know what you're thinking. 2 whole weeks? That's so much time. I know, but here's what's great. By spending just 2 weeks at the beginning of the school year, I can minimize disruptions, foster a safe space for learning, and ultimately make the rest of the year an absolute joy for both me and my students. And after teaching for nearly 20 years, I still absolutely love my job and I love working with students. And I couldn't imagine beginning the school year any other way. So, why 2 weeks? Why not just a day or two, or sprinkle it in as you go? The core of it comes down to 2 things: consistency and ownership. Think about it. When you start a new job, what's the first thing you do? You learn the ropes, right? Where's the copy machine? How do I submit a report? What's the team's culture like? Kids need that too, and often more explicitly. By dedicating 2 full weeks, we're not just telling them the rules. We're giving them the time and space to practice and internalize every single routine, from how to turn in papers, to asking a question, to transitioning between subjects. And I want to be clear, this isn't about obedience. It's about building automaticity. When students don't have to think about something, their brains are freed up to focus on the what, the actual learning. Let's break down what actually happens during these 2 weeks. A significant portion of our time is spent on routines and procedures. And yes, this includes everything. Now, the good news is you don't have to come up with the list yourself. My colleagues and I came up with a totally free template that you can use that lists all the routines and procedures we could think of. I'll be sure to link the video and the template in the description box below, but I just want to point out that we created this list with multiple grade levels in mind, elementary all the way through high school. So please don't think you need to do everything on the list. Simply delete the items that don't apply to your age group or situation, or add in items as you see fit, because it's totally customizable. But here are some common items that most teachers will review and some reflection questions to help you think about what a student might be wondering. So, first, entering the classroom. What do you do when you walk in? Where do you put your backpack or supplies? What's the first activity you do? Asking questions. Do you raise your hand or do any special signal? Will the teacher only ask for volunteer responses, or might she cold call on students too? Small group transitions. How do we move quietly and efficiently from whole group to small groups in the classroom? Using classroom materials. Where are the markers? How do we put them away? And how do we turn in work once it's done? And of course, things like lining up, sharpening pencils, asking to go to the restroom, you name it, we practice it. Now, I know the majority of you are probably wondering exactly what that looks like, and I'd be more than happy to make specific videos on individual procedures, but for the sake of time, I'm going to go over how I introduce just the first routine, which is entering the classroom. I'm going to go through every step of the process to show you why it takes so much time in order to be thorough and for it to be internalized and fun for the students. But if that's not your jam, here's the timestamp to jump to if you want to see me talk about community building. Okay, entering the classroom. I greet my students at the door on the first day of school and every day after that. But on the first day, I literally sit on a stool in the door frame so that I am at eye level with them, and I say, "Good morning, welcome to 5th grade. My name is Miss Rosier. What's your name?" This not only teaches them their first routine, but it also allows me to hear them say their name without me cold calling them in front of the entire class. And take it from a Marielle de Rosier, please don't cold call names in front of the class. All you have to do is have a class roster on a clipboard when you greet them at the door, and make edits to quickly write a phonetic spelling or a preferred name as they greet you. It also allows me to repeat back to them and give them the opportunity to correct me if I'm not pronouncing their name. Another reason I like to greet them at the door is it allows me to gauge their energy. Are they excited, nervous, tired, whatever? It also shows me if they're able to wait patiently for their turn. These are all things I'm picking up on while I'm saying hi to each student. Now, since this is the first day, they're just going to go straight to their seat with all of their belongings and begin a surprise activity. I'll link a video of what that is, but basically they're decorating an envelope that ends up being for a birthday card I send them later. So they're sitting there coloring quietly while I'm greeting students at the door. Sometimes I put on some mellow music just so that it's not totally silent. But I haven't actually taught them the procedure yet. For the majority of my procedures, I break it down into these steps. I state my expectation, let the students practice it, reflect on how it went, and refine the process. So let's begin with stating my expectation. After everyone has entered the classroom and has been working quietly for some time, I introduce myself and welcome them to their 5th grade classroom. And then I tell them that we are all going to go outside and enter the classroom again. At this point, they're giving each other sideways glances or stifling giggles, but it doesn't matter. I display this slide and tell them that this is our procedure for entering the classroom every morning. Then we discuss each item. What is a proper verbal greeting? What are examples of things you can say? Does anyone know greetings in other languages besides English? What are things that don't qualify as a verbal greeting? Grunting at me, for example. And all the while, I'm writing these down on the board and, we're laughing, we're having a fun, easy morning on the first day. After that, we take a look at our cubbies. Now remember, all of their backpacks are still at their seats, so we take a minute to see where our cubby is, and we come up with ideas of how to best fit our supplies in our cubby without it all spilling out. For example, what if you have a rolly backpack and it doesn't fit? What are some ideas of how we can solve that problem? Do you see why this all takes so long? Now, could I just tell them what to do? Sure. And that wouldn't take more than maybe 30 seconds. But then they're not engaged and they're not actually part of the solution. There's no buy-in, and they certainly don't have any autonomy in their own decision making. And most importantly, I couldn't possibly outline every scenario for them. So I'd rather teach them to work the problem themselves than for me to have 1,000 questions at some other time just because something is slightly different than how I explained it on the first day. And that's the point. I have my expectations for how I want the task completed, but ultimately how they get there is up to them. All right, the last step on the expectation list is the share and connect question. This is basically a fun or silly question or would you rather scenario that I post every day to begin our class. I have a video on it, but you could certainly begin your class however you want and add that step here. So at this point, we've already spent a good 15 to 20 minutes just going over how this whole routine works. And now it's time to go back outside and practice it. So they stand up, go outside, line up, give me a verbal greeting one by one at the door. They put their stuff away for real this time, and then they sit down and read today's question. Then we share our responses with our table group and then the entire class. We also talk about how the first procedure went. Did someone forget what to do? If so, how did we help them? What could we have done differently or better? So here I am at least 30 minutes into the first day, and I've only gone over one of my procedures. One. But guess what? I don't waste a single minute ever having to explain how to do that entire routine again. Now, will there be some students who forget on the second day? Sure. But that's why I stand outside and say, all right, class, before we enter the classroom today, who can remind us what the first step is for entering the classroom? And there are always students who remember and share it with the others. And then that's it, because that's how they enter the classroom every single day for 180 days, and it's awesome. No more wild running into the room, no more free-for-all at the cubbies as they're all trying to put their stuff away at the same time because it is staggered by their arrival and me greeting them. And best of all, I know that I start every day having a small personal interaction with each student. I get to talk to them, gauge their energy, and provide any support they might need first thing. And of course, I don't teach every procedure this way. I mean, showing the bathroom signal only takes a few seconds to demonstrate, but for the big things, for the ones that they do daily or the procedures that have very specific expectations, I have to spend this kind of time on them. I also have fun with it. After I teach the most basic procedures in the morning, I have the students do a scavenger hunt where they have to find other students in the class who can explain the procedures to them. This not only gets them up out of their seat, but it also allows me to check for understanding by giving them the opportunity to explain it to someone else. Then, after everyone is done, we sit down as a group and I call on students to share who they found that knew the procedures. It's not only a great way to review them as an entire class, but it also gives the students an easy sense of accomplishment. And if they're new, they get to learn each other's names in the process. Okay, let's talk community. Beyond the nitty-gritty procedures, the other huge component is establishing a positive, safe classroom community. This is where we shift from a group of individuals to a cohesive, supportive team. So we spend time on things like establishing community agreements. We actually don't have static rules in my class. Instead, we create agreements or norms together that reflect how we want to be treated. So what does a respectful classroom look like, sound like, feel like? What does it mean to be a good listener? When students have a voice in creating these guidelines, they have a much stronger sense of ownership and are more likely to uphold them. Here's a list of agreements my students came up with last year. We celebrate failure because it allows us to succeed faster. We trust each other and rebuild that trust when it has been broken. We express our emotions. We can be mad, but we can't be mean. And we know how to ask for help and when to ask for space. Now, of course, these took multiple days and lots of iterations to feel right, but they did it. And every day we read those agreements together and brought them up whenever something happened in the classroom that needed to be addressed. Next is building trust. Throughout those first 2 weeks, we do activities to learn each other's interests, strengths, and even things we don't like. We also do activities that allow students to feel safe enough to take risks, to ask questions when they don't understand, and even make mistakes without fear of judgment. Speaking of, one of the items I introduced on the first day of school is this section on my board titled Miss D's Errors. This is a section of the board where students get to write my mistakes or errors, because there's no way I'm going to ask my students to be vulnerable in recognizing their mistake and to honestly celebrate failures unless I'm willing to do it myself first. So beginning on the first day, they get to point out when I make an error and they write it on the board. Now, they can't be rude about it, but it also allows me to, one, show them that I'm human, and two, model how to accept feedback and learn from a mistake and correct it. And since I show how it's not that big of a deal and it's something that we can all do, they start to feel a lot more comfortable doing it themselves. And this builds trust. Okay, developing empathy. Now, I luck out because I feel like I have a great community that I live in, and the families do a wonderful job teaching empathy and the importance of being part of a larger community. But one way I reinforce that in my classroom is through whole class meetings. I have an entire fun process I do for class meetings that the students really enjoy and allows them to actually be productive. I haven't made a video on that yet, but if that's something you're interested in, let me know in the comment section below. But essentially, class meetings are one way that students get to practice demonstrating empathy for each other and begin to recognize others for their accomplishments. For me, building community isn't just an educational buzzword. It's the foundation for everything that I do in the classroom. When students feel safe and connected, they are more engaged, they're more willing to participate, and ultimately, I feel like they're more successful academically. They know that their voice matters and that they are an important part of something bigger than themselves. It is our class, and I do not run an authoritarian classroom. My goal in all of this is student autonomy. It doesn't matter the grade level or age that I'm teaching. I feel like students are capable of doing so much for themselves, And I think that's basically the core of my classroom management. Yes, students are respectful towards me and each other, but most importantly, I trust them. And I trust them to understand the expectations and to figure it out if things don't go to plan. I'd like to take a moment to give a little context to my student population and district. I don't discuss this that much because I think it's important for my students to have confidentiality, but what I can share is that I don't have a small class. This year, I'll have 33, but technically up to 34 fifth grade students of various cultures and backgrounds. And in any given year, about half will be English language learners, and around 20 or maybe 15% of my students will qualify for special ed. We are a California public school that is also a Title I school and a community school. I teach in a medium-sized district with about over 15,000 students across various elementary, middle, and high schools. We also live in an area of California that has a very high cost of living, and most of the families at our schools are employed through various local government agencies or the agricultural industry. It also happens to be a community and a school district that I attended when I was a kid. I've been a teacher for about 20 years and have experience in elementary, middle, and high school, and as an administrator when I was a dean of students. But most of my career has been in middle school. However, the last few years I've been teaching second grade and now fifth grade. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of background about me and my students, which I think is pretty representative of a lot of schools in the US, or at least in the California area. I'd like to finish this video with an explanation of the payoff for spending those 2 weeks focusing on essentially classroom management and community. And it's pretty simple. The rest of the year is awesome. First, minimized disruptions. Because everyone knows the expectations and has practiced them, those constant, like, what do I do now? Or off-task behaviors drastically decrease. And because I work really, really hard to mitigate anxiety and to foster genuine connections, I don't really have the typical attention-seeking behaviors that you might see in other classes. Students know what to do and they enjoy doing it. Next is increased independence. Students are empowered to manage themselves and their learning, freeing you up to focus on teaching, not on behavior or task management. Students of all ages like feeling a sense of accomplishment and for an intrinsic motivation for doing what they're doing. There's also deeper learning. With less chaos, there's more time for genuine inquiry and critical thinking and collaborative projects. Students aren't afraid to share ideas or ask for help because they know their classmates aren't going to pounce on them for not having the right answer. And I'm not going to shame them for just being a kid. Also, it's not as if I'm not teaching any curriculum the first 2 weeks. Some of these routines are actually part of how I deliver the curriculum. For example, a lot of my math instruction involves group work. So one of the things we focus on at the beginning is how to effectively collaborate on a math problem together, how to give feedback, how to make sure everyone has a voice in the solution, and that kind of thing. So yes, I am doing some actual teaching during this time period. It's just that I prioritize systems first and the actual content second. It also creates a positive learning environment. Our classroom becomes a safe haven where every student feels valued, respected, and ready to learn. It's a place where risks are encouraged and mistakes are seen as opportunities for growth. Mistakes are literally how they get to the solution. Try, fail, refine, try again, solution. For me, this upfront investment means less stress, more teaching, and a classroom full of happy, engaged kids. It truly transforms the school year from a struggle into a celebration of learning. And I don't want to sugarcoat it. I'm not saying that all the students are silent and compliant all the time. Like, that's not even what I want. But when a student is struggling or when they're having a moment where they feel dysregulated or upset, It's okay. They know I'm not going to bail on them or get frustrated the first time a challenge comes up. And yes, that means I've had to work exceptionally hard on not having a big emotional reaction when a kid is ultimately just demonstrating kid behavior, including yelling or clearing a desk of its contents. Remember, these are children we're dealing with, and they don't have the life experience or sometimes even the healthy modeling of what positive interactions should look or feel like. And if you're like me and you're teaching fifth grade this year, remember, these are the kids who had kindergarten online during COVID. Kindergarten. And so, bless any of you who taught kindergarten online. I bet you found that mute button real quick. So, if you're a teacher and you're nervous about these first few weeks, or perhaps looking for a way to make your classroom just run more smoothly, I highly encourage you to consider this 2-week approach. And if you're interested in more back to school ideas, then check out this playlist of all my favorite beginning of the year activities. And if you're a brand new teacher, welcome. And feel free to check out this playlist specifically geared towards people entering the teaching field.